Hey friends, and welcome to Kate Casts On. If you're new here, my name is Caitlin, and I'm a knitter, spinner, sewist, weaver, and sometimes quilter based out of the Pacific Northwest. Flock Fiber Festival in Seattle is coming up in just a few short weeks, and I'm personally taking some time to kind of make a game plan, some guidelines for myself, and I thought I would take you along for the ride, share some of my tips and advice, and maybe we can sit down and kind of create a little bit of a plan for our festival trip together. So grab your craft of choice, a notebook, pen, pencil, just something to take notes with, settle in, and let's get started. If you've caught previous episodes of my podcast here on YouTube, you probably know I'm a little bit of a planner. I really enjoy sitting down, taking some time to kind of create a little bit of a framework for myself when it comes to my making, and going to fiber festivals isn't really an exception to that at all. I personally find it really helpful to sit down in the quiet of my own home and just like set some basic guidelines for myself on what I'm hoping to get out of this festival. It doesn't mean that I can't change my mind. Like maybe I encounter something in one of the booths that I wasn't expecting and it just totally takes my breath away. I can change my mind, and I'm giving myself space to do that. But kind of setting these rules, guidelines, things I'm looking for beforehand means that I don't have to make decisions in the heat of the moment if I don't want to. So it gives me kind of something to lean on, something I know I decided on with a clear head, that I can lean on for support if I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed or just very, very inspired by a lot of things in the festival, which I very much will be. Now, do you have to do prep work to like have a great weekend at Flock? Absolutely not. This is what works for me, and I encourage you to kind of follow along, jot down some categories that we'll talk about on things you can think about ahead of time, and, do what works for you and leave the rest. If I'm overdoing it, that's totally fine. If you want to add sections or add things that you think would be helpful for you, do it. But hopefully this kind of gives you a little bit of a framework and helps you kind of wrap your head around things you might want to think about before you head into the festival too. A little bit of background about me and just like where I'm coming from going into Flock. Number one, I do have a budget range in mind. It's a little bit flexible. It's not super firm, but there is a number that I would like to stay under, and that's kind of framing some of my decisions and goals coming into this. Two is personally, I don't love having a big stash. Big respect for you. If you do, that's amazing. For me, I just tend to feel a bit weighted down if my stash gets, above a moderate size. And so I don't really want to bring home just a ton of things because they're beautiful. I want to bring home things with purpose, both for budgetary reasons and also just so that I don't personally feel overwhelmed by the amount of stash that I have in my house afterwards. And then three, I am planning on doing other shopping this year for yarn and fiber and materials outside of Flock. There is another festival that I'm going to later this fall. There's probably going to be some online shopping that I do in the meantime, shopping at my local yarn store, stuff like that. So this is just one of many things. And so I'm just kind of looking to go in, get a few things, feel inspired, meet some really lovely people, have some fun, but it's not like going to be this huge thing for me. And if I would just walk away with a few things and, spend a third of my budget, that's totally fine with me. With all of that background information being said, let's go ahead and get into the actual planning part. Up first is a section that I feel like pretty much everyone would benefit from just taking a few minutes to think about before they head into the festival. And that is big picture goals. Basically, what do you need in order to walk away from the weekend feeling like it was a success? For me personally, the few things that would make the weekend feel like a success to me is if I stick within my budget range. That's pretty important to me. I have a few things that I'm specifically kind of looking for. So if I can come away with, at least one or two of those things, that would be really, really awesome. And three, I also have a list of things that I do not want to buy. I know myself. I know I'm going to get into some hand dyer's booth, find a really lovely skein of yarn, and want to come home with just one of them. And I'm not letting myself do that this year because I have enough single skeins in my stash. At the pace that I personally knit like single skein projects, accessories, realize I have at least a year's worth of yarn that I can do that with, so I do not want to bring home any more this year. You might have a totally different list of priorities. Maybe budget isn't a concern for you, but you want to make sure that you set aside enough time to sit down and knit and chat and catch up with all of your friends. Or maybe a hand dyer has like a special show colorway on yarn or fiber that you really want to make sure that you grab. Or maybe the priority is that you want to stay out of the hecticness and would rather prioritize coming and shopping in calmer times of day. This is going to look totally different for everyone, and that's totally okay. You get to decide what makes the weekend a success for you. But essentially, when you're thinking about your big picture goals, I encourage you to come at it from the perspective of what would you go out of your way to prioritize and to make sure happens? The festival is only a couple days, and, not everybody comes for all days. Last year I just went for Saturday. And so taking a second to think about, what would I go out of my way to make sure happens means that you'll walk away from the weekend feeling like it was a success. Okay, the next category that I like to plan for is projects that I want to shop for. Like I said, I don't personally love having a huge stash, and especially for like garment quantities of yarn, I like going in with a project in mind. If that's not you, maybe you still want to kind of jot some of this down, but maybe not to the level of detail that I personally really like doing. But for me, I set aside a pretty sizable list of projects that I'm interested in knitting and kind of order them by, priority. The things that I really want to knit go at the top, or really want to shop for go at the top. And then I just have some additional ideas towards the bottom that are really helpful if I encounter a skein of yarn or whatever that I think would work really great for it. It's just nice to have some information written down for potential projects for those kinds of things too. So in my notes app on my phone, I make a list of projects that I want to shop for. I include the name of the pattern, the designer. I include a link to Ravelry in case I need to quickly access like more details while I'm at the festival. But I also include the size that I want to knit, how much yardage I need, yarn weight. And then if I do have opinions on it, I will also jot down like colors that I'm thinking of or any characteristics of the yarn that I think are really important. Like if I'm envisioning this project with a woolen spun yarn, I'm going to write down I want a woolen spun yarn. Or if I think this one would look really great in a single ply yarn, I'm going to write that down too, just so that I have that information available for me and I don't need to go hunting for it in the hecticness of someone's booth. If you are a little bit more free flow when it comes to collecting stash and project planning, I do at least recommend like taking a minute to think about yardage quantities needed for different weight garments that you enjoy knitting. So if you want to knit a DK weight sweater, on average, how much yardage do you need for that? If you want to knit a worsted weight sweater, how much does that take? A fingering weight tee? Like those are just helpful quantities to have written down, easily accessible for you so that you can reference them without needing to kind of go through Ravelry or figure that stuff out on the spot. Also, there's more for sale at Flock than just yarn and fiber. So personally, I have a whip that I'm currently working on that I still need to buy buttons for. So in that case, I'm actually planning on bringing the swatch for my project along with me, just sticking it in my purse or my bag or whatever, so that I can quickly pull it out and compare buttons to it and make sure that, I like the combination. I'm also going to write down the size of buttons ideally that I'm looking for and how many I need. If you are shopping for buttons, it can also be really helpful to bring a little tape measure with you, just so that you can double check sizes and make sure that they're going to work for your project. Personally, I know that I am not going to buy everything for all the projects that I list out in my notes beforehand. My budget just wouldn't allow for it. There's no way. But having a larger list of ideas to work from really helps me make decisions in the moment, feel like, I have some options, some flexibility. I'm not just like honed in on specific rules that I have to follow while I'm there. It does, allow me to be inspired in the moment and just kind of go with the flow a little bit more, but also have some structure and some guidelines so that I don't come home and realize, oh shoot, I should have bought another skein of yarn in order to, knit a project. The next thing that I kind of like to think through before heading into the festival is my must-see vendor list. Now, the goal is to see all the vendors and all the booths and spend time really looking at everything. However, Flock especially is a huge show, and last year I was kind of taken aback and unprepared for just how much there was there, how many beautiful things I was drawn to. and all of that. And so having a list of vendors kind of going into it that I know that I want to make time for and go out of my way to see potentially, it's just really helpful. And again, just makes me feel like I walk away from the weekend feeling like I did what I came to do. And so, yeah, I would be really bummed if there was a vendor that, I knew I wanted to kind of visit in the back of my mind and just ended up kind of glossing over their booth potentially in the moment. And if I wasn't able to spend some time going through there, I would feel a little bit disappointed. This can also be really helpful because on Saturday, at least last year, it was very, very busy in the conference center. And there were some booths that were so full that I could not get into them when I initially passed them, even though they were just like must see vendors for me. I just it was too busy and I needed to come back to them. So having that list means that I don't forget that, I do want to come back and see those vendors and shop their booths. I think this category of planning is also really, really helpful if you're only planning on coming to the festival for one day. That's what I did last year, and we drove quite a ways to and from the festival in that same day as well. So time was quite precious. And I also, needed to take time to eat and have some breaks. And so making sure that I really made note of who I wanted to see was very, very helpful for me. When I make this list, I also like to note or categorize these vendors by what I'm interested in shopping at their booths. It could just be as simple as, I like their yarn and I just want to make sure I go there. But in some cases, there is fiber that I'm looking for there, or there's a specific yarn base that I want to feel in person. Last year, I really wanted to feel some Shanico bases, so I made note of that. This year, I'm really looking forward to feeling some summer bases from some yarn companies, and just kind of getting a chance to feel them in person will be really helpful for me. Whether or not I walk away with any amount of that yarn at the festival, I don't know, but I do want to take a minute to intentionally find those yarn bases, feel them, and just kind of get a sense of what they can do. The next kind of level of planning that I like to do is making a list of the items that I physically want on my person while walking through the festival. This isn't just like a generic packing list for your trip. It's what do you want with you inside the conference center while you're walking through the booths. First up for me, a huge priority is comfortable walking shoes, especially last year. Like I said, we did it in one day. There was a ton of walking that we did. I think we looped that conference center 7 times at least. And so, yeah, having some comfortable walking shoes was really important. There are nice places to sit down and rest, but it never hurts to be a little bit, cautious and comfortable. Second, bring a water bottle, bring a fully sealable water bottle that you can just pop in a bag. That was really, really something that I wish that I prioritized last year. There are water bottles for sale inside the building, but they're kind of pricey. There's a little bit of a markup. And the reason why I didn't initially bring one in is I was thinking, I don't really want to carry around that level of weight. But I ended up just carrying around that water bottle and refilling it at the water fountains anyway. There's water bottle refilling stations with the water fountains. And so I was carrying it around anyway. So if I just brought a water bottle with me, I would have saved a few bucks, and I'm going to carry it around anyway. So yeah, highly recommend just sticking a water bottle in your bag, and know that there are refilling stations very handy throughout the building. So you can kind of top it off as you go. Next, I recommend bringing a small whip to work on. Last year, I think I made the mistake of bringing a little bit too large of a whip. I had a sweater in progress, and carrying that around, along with all of my purchases and stuff, it just got a little bit bulky. So I think this year I'm going to be bringing a pair of socks into the conference center with me, and they'll be contained in their own little project bag inside a bag so that it's easier to pull out. It was really nice to have just a sweater to work on last year, but it was kind of a pain for most of the day because I spent most of the day shopping, not working on my whip. So just something to keep in mind. I think a small whip that's easily contained would be really nice to bring around. And it's still, something that you can easily pull out and work on when you're taking breaks. Speaking of bags, I do recommend bringing, a tote bag or two to carry your water bottle, your work in progress, and then any purchases you make. Shops do have bags that you can, carry your purchases away with, but it's way easier if you can just combine things into a couple bags that are a little bit larger. Flock does sell really, really nice large tote bags at the merch table. They also did a pre-order, so you can come in with a tote bag potentially as well. But personally for me, I'm just going to be bringing a couple tote bags that I typically use as project bags, and I'll kind of leave one kind of rolled up and folded inside another until I actually do need that second bag pulled out, just to kind of help keep things compact. The next thing to keep in mind is you want your payment method easily accessible. You don't want to have to go digging through a really big tote bag to find your wallet every single time you want to buy something. So personally, I like wearing kind of a crossbody sling style bag that carries my phone, that carries, my credit card, my license, all the important information really close to me so I don't misplace it, and it's also really easy to access when I need it. I think every vendor that I bought something from last year had tap to pay as an option. So this really could be as simple as just having your phone accessible to you if you have, payment methods on your phone. But just something to keep in mind, you don't want to be digging in and out. And so just coming prepared with a method of keeping that easily accessible will be really helpful. And then also just a few other little things you might want to bring with you. Number one is a mask. If you're coming first thing on Saturday morning, they do have mask only shopping hours to just allow immunocompromised people shop comfortably. So definitely bring one of those if you're planning on coming a first thing on Saturday. I don't totally remember when those mask only hours end, but check the Flock website just to be sure when that is. And then second, you might want to bring a small fan. This could be, motorized, electric, or just like a little hand fan to use. Last year, especially on Saturday morning, it was toasty in there. It got warm. Everyone was crammed in the space, so excited and energized. Everyone was wearing knitwear. It got a little warm. So bringing a little fan or something like that to help you stay cool, I'm sure will be really, really helpful. Last year was my first year at Flock, and I did hear one person say that the year before was a little bit cold, actually. I think based on volume of people, it's probably going to lean warmer than colder, but you might want to be prepared just to have a little bit of something in case it is kind of cold in there this year as well. Another level of planning that you might find helpful to kind of think through ahead of time does not need to be complex. It can be very, very simple. But personally, I find thinking through a little bit of a game plan to be really nice so that I can kind of go in and have a clear picture of how I want to tackle all the booths and all the things that I want to see. Thankfully, I go with my sister and we're very much on the same page about how we want to do things and tackle everything. And we personally like doing an initial pass of all the booths pretty quickly. Maybe making a purchase or two if we're really, really excited about something. But for the most part, just trying to get a sense of what's there, get our bearings, get a sense of where people are, and kind of doing that kind of pass is really helpful for us. During this initial pass, I do make sure to have my phone out and I'm taking notes of anything that I'm interested in that I want to make sure I come back to, because there's going to be a lot that I'm inspired by, but also I have a limited budget. And so I do need to make decisions kind of wisely. And I want to make sure I have a whole picture of the things available to me before I start making a ton of purchases and allocating a lot of money to specific places. So I carry my phone around with me very close. I have it out. I'm taking notes on things I want to come back for and potentially reconsider down the line. But that's kind of our game plan. Maybe you want to really prioritize your must-see vendors first and you want to pop around the map and make sure you go to all of them first. That's totally a valid way of going about things too. Maybe another thing to consider is how long are you willing to wait in line at one specific vendor before, you're getting kind of uncomfortable and you want to make sure you go see other things. There are a few booths that have quite the lines, especially on Saturday. So just taking a minute to kind of wrap your head around that, think about how you want to tackle things. That can be really helpful and make your day a little bit easier on the spot. The last thing that I want to emphasize with all of this is you need to make your notes accessible to you easily on the day of. Personally, I write down all my must-see vendors, my budget, all the projects I'm interested in shopping for, all of that stuff that we just talked about. I put it in my notes app on my phone because that's what's really easy for me to pull up and access while I'm at the conference. It's not very helpful if you take all of these notes in a Google Doc if that's not how you access things, on the go on your phone in the moment. You want to make sure that all the work that you put into planning is easily accessible while you're at the festival. I also encourage you to take some time to format your notes so that it's really easy to scan while you're, in the heat of the moment. Use bullet points, use headings, use checklists so that you can mark things off as you buy them or as you visit places, and just kind of easily visualize quickly where you're at within your plan. Also, just kind of think about any ways that you can make your life a little bit easier in the moment. If you're planning on meeting a friend or going to some kind of meetup at a specific time, I highly recommend setting an alarm on your phone beforehand, just so you don't have to think about it. You don't have to keep checking the clock on your phone or anything like that. You know that it'll go off when you need to leave, and that's taken care of. Anything that you can do beforehand to make your experience in the festival more enjoyable, more carefree, more easy is always, I think, worth taking some time to do. So that is pretty much where my head is at in terms of planning for Flock. Those are kind of the things that I'm going to be thinking through and am thinking through before I head to the festival. I hope this video was helpful for you, whether this is your first time going to Flock or a repeat time. I'm really, really looking forward to having a great time at the festival, coming home with some goodies, meeting some new friends, and just enjoying being in a community that is so, so lovely and inspiring and wonderful. If you see me walking around at Flock, feel free to come say hello. I would love to meet you guys. But in the meantime, you can always find me on Instagram or Ravelry. My username is KateCassOn in both of those places. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Those things really help me out and help me make more content like this. I hope you have a really wonderful next few weeks leading up to Flock. I hope to see you there, and also I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.